everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Tube, where it's our show where we review things in the world of television. Most times now we are reviewing episode by episodes of brand new seasons airing on television right now, but sometimes we are doing these special seasonal reviews where we review an entire season of a show, spoiler filled. Normally nowadays it's just us going back to previously wrapped up sub-series that we've done before, kind of giving a more spoiler filled conversation, because at the time we wanted to be more respectful to people who haven't watched the whole season, but now enough time has passed. Today, if you click on the title, it's The Rookie Season 3, which I can't believe we're already here. I distinctly remember 2 years ago I was rewatching season 1 to get ready for season 5, and then last year with 2 to 6, and now here we are again for 3 to 7. And 7 comes out next week, and I haven't really settled in yet the fact that Rookie's going to come back yet. I feel like it's just been a very busy time of year for me that it hasn't really sunk into me that one of my favorite shows of all time is coming back next week, and I'm very excited for it, for all the new changes, all the new cast members, the new storylines they're going to do. I can't wait for that to happen. But before we get to that, I have to go back to season 3, where ironically more often than not, 3 and 6 were kind of more coinciding together, where they came after a major event that kind of changed the state of the industry. This being COVID-19, and then season 6 being for the SAG-AFTRA strikes, and also the WGA strikes. Let me not forget that. But for us to be here now, where again, I distinctly remember we just wrapped up recording the second season review. The COVID-19 pandemic was just beginning, and we had no idea what season 3 was going to be released. Hell, we didn't even get a season 3 announced until I think a few weeks after season 2 came out. So like for me reviewing it, I had no idea we were going to come back. I thought the pandemic was going to kill the show and we would be left on a cliffhanger. Here we are. Not only did we get season 3, we got 4, 5, 6, and now 7 coming out. I'm blessed to still have this one of my favorite shows still on the air after all this time. Who the heck knows where things lie beyond after this TV season, but at least for now, I'm just very happy of it. And now going back to this season specifically, it being a very challenging season for them to do. It wasn't a full season. They had to work with the constraints of, again, a pandemic. Also, they had a lot of storylines that had to come to a head this season because, again, one of the differentiating things about The Rookie is that they at least at the beginning, they didn't follow a traditional TV to real life schedule, where normally you get a Thanksgiving episode, you get a Christmas episode, Valentine's Day. Like it coincides with the real life events. Hell, we even have a Christmas episode yet on The Rookie yet, which I'm like, that's crazy for me. At least I guess I do understand they want to be timeline displacement. They don't want to be stuck in a time zone here. But with all that being said, season 3 was a challenge from the beginning. They not only had to wrap up everything that season 2 was setting up, also kicking off the end of the rookies' journeys as what's the title they get as boots. They, as well as for our obviously our more established officers, having to kind of figure out what's next, because for at least for these 2 seasons, they have gone through so much. Like this year has been a little bit more challenging and different for them. Now they got to wonder what lies beyond the next this batch of rookies. What is next for them? And I think the way they did is a little interesting. I will admit, now looking back on it, it's a little bit jumbled, and I do understand the reason why certain things were kind of jumbled was because, again, they were having to work with the larger story here. So I don't think quite everything made it through. But I do admit that the way they kind of pulled everything together, again, only working with 14 episodes instead of their usual 18 to 20, I think it was still very much a sizable way to hey, let's keep this going, let's keep this energy going, let's push these characters to their next chapters, so to speak. And I feel like it's more teasing than not of the storylines they did pick out for what they were going through now to where they were going to go to in next time in season 4. And I think they did a really, really great job with it. Were a couple things I noticed in this rewatch, because again, I haven't watched season 3 since 2020. Well, no, 2021. I haven't watched it since then. So there's a bit of a different context for me, because again, I know what's going to happen in the next 3 seasons, and I also know now the entirety of it, knowing where things are going to go. And I think, again, honestly than not, this was a really, really great season. But I did admit, again, there were some things they had to kind of cut a little corner, and I am going to be using some future points here to bring down a little bit of the rating. But again, at the end of the day, I think this season was all about challenging the cast and the characters in a way that it all was connected. It all made sense for the larger story. And at the end of the day, regardless of how things would turn out later on, I think this served as a reminder of, like, just what a platform the Rookie is. Where, again, is the Rookie the biggest show in the world? Sadly not, but it has grown in popularity since even this season. But the way they were able to, like, kind of take what was going on in the real world, and not in the exact way you were expecting, but able to kind of translate it and actually turn into a meaningful message in a way was, I think personally, was fulfilling. That, again, there is the argument to play that TV shows should just be a break from reality. We don't need to see what we're already seeing on the news and on our social media account in a TV show that we enjoy. But I feel like at times when, like, the source material is directly alongside that original content, that I think it's a necessary, at least in my opinion, to how do you tackle it? Similar to how Grey's Anatomy in that season tackled COVID-19. And it worked to the benefit of, like, at least in that show, of hopefulness. And I kind of see that a little bit here, even though it was a little bit rougher to get to that message, so to speak. But again, before we get to the spoiler points of the review, please, if you haven't yet, go watch season 3. I really, really, really recommend it. I think it's a great season. I'm not going to rank it just quite yet. We'll get to that in the end, but it definitely is worth the binge. I would have loved to, like, binge this out, but I had to pace myself because I had other things going on, even though I would have loved to binge this. This is definitely worth the binge. This is definitely like take a whole weekend off and go binge the whole 14 episodes. It's a lot of fun. It's great. You're gonna be pleasant with yourself. But again, with all that being said, let's get down to it. So last thing, you can go watch the entirety of The Rookie third season on Hulu right now, and also Disney Plus if you have the Hulu add-on. So you have all that combined for you. Anyway, with that all being said, let's get down to it. So I want to say, when it comes to, like, again, like the story aspect of it, we're picking out where we left off with season 2. We had a whole ordeal with Armstrong, with I forgot her name. It's damn it, I should have done my minor research before this, but it's the her name is literally on the tip of my tongue. I just cannot remember for the life of me. But we had a whole storyline with this prisoner who's a serial killer who got attached to Nolan, and I had history with Armstrong, which was with a detective that Nolan kind of became buddies with during the events of season 2. Now that kind of turned all over its head when we get to season 3 now, because again, he's been exposed as a mole, but at the same time, him trying to cover himself is planning to get Nolan as the mole, and that's kind of where we ended season 2 to now season 3, where Nolan is literally a wanted man, but not in the way that that felt natural, because at the end of the day, all Armstrong wants to do is get himself out. Also, the serial killer's name is Rosalind. There we go. I was like, it's on the tip of my tongue. It really was. And I was like, I kind of forgot about it. But anyway, so when it came to that's kind of where we kick off there. We're like, again, we're at that very crucial juncture point where, at least for our rookie cast, they're all in their final month of their program. So now this is a very critical step where, like, there's a lot they have to still learn. There's still certain things that even though they're at the very closing edge of the finish line, there's still some things to do. And then with this story arc in particular, which kicks us off to the next story arc, I definitely do believe it kind of it begins the whole challenging, what does policing really mean? Like, what is the integrity of the badge? And I will commend them how, again, I don't imagine when we get to the second arc after this first episode that was originally planned back before the pandemic. And the reason why I was saying, like, certain real world events is, like, they didn't include the pandemic here because technically in the timeline, well, they just opted not to do it. Let's keep the timeline out of this for a second, but they opted to go into it with because I still remember at the time period of 2020, this was the midst of the pandemic, and there was a whole conversation around policing, and of course the brutality of police brutality as in relation to the George Floyd murder, and that coming out at the time, again, the kind of question of, like, would the show, like, would any policing procedurals or dramas or anything in that field be addressing that in this upcoming TV season? And again, I know that's like like something that, like, should not be in the conversation, but again, it is a real thing, and the writers, kind of being isolated for a while, witnessing this happening. At the same time, they're going through the storyline of, like, you know, does having the badge have the same validity of that every single officer, every single detective, everyone who has one has the same level of integrity? And the answer is no. There are various different degrees of cops, which we already explored in, and I think this season it was the one that really kind of like put it to a head, especially in that first 5 episodes where you got to see a whole different perspective of it. But back to the Armstrong thing, I will say that I'm so confused whether or not, even to this day, whether or not that was planned to be part of season 2 or into season 3. I'm not 100% certain by this point. But again, it was a nice way to kind of, like, leave people hanging for like 7 months on end while we had to wait till January of the next year to come back to this world to see how that happened. And rewatching it again, going back into it, especially that first episode, I was really like still gravitating towards this of like what was going to happen. And because again, it's been so long, so I completely forgot certain things that has happened, especially with Nolan playing it smart, teaming up with Wesley, the Angela pregnancy line kind of be kicking off here. At the same time, still with Lucy and Wes at the tail of their training, kind of like realizing, like, seeing their own partner, their own like companion being blamed for a crime, which they know he never did. But again, as the wise Tim Bradford always says, don't expect someone to be completely honest, because you never really know. Like, their true colors will not get shown until later on. And I think this was a very wonderful case on how they were able to kind of tie everything together. And I really loved, like, there were certain moments in like that premiere where we saw Armstrong kind of like just loading his friends, like, yeah, everything's going the way exact. I'm gonna get out of this. I'm gonna get out of this to a team. And then Rosalind was like, no, this not easy, Nicky boy. You're not gonna get away with it this time that easily. And I will admit, it kind of lost a little luster. I feel like I wanted to see more of Nolan a little bit on the lam, a little bit. I don't know why. It's just, for me, that seemed the more like the more engaging part for myself, at least in my opinion, at least. But regardless of what I believe, I still believe they managed to like really make it tenseful. It kind of sucks because, again, that's the one problem when you're doing a cliffhanger with your lead, kind of, with their status on the line. Like, you can't really not hide it so well when you're doing the promotion material. So we kind of already had the feeling no one was going to get out of this somehow. But the way they do it's like, it was just very intriguing. I was just very bummed that by the end of it, they didn't really bring back Armstrong. I don't believe they killed him off, but I do definitely was a little bit shocked that they decided to like kind of keep him sidelined for a while. But maybe in the future, you never really know. But then when we get to the real core of it, exploring their last month together, and that still baffles me more. Season 1 took place for 6 months. Season 2 took place for 5 months, and this season only takes place through about a month. A month and some change, maybe like a month, maybe like 5 weeks. And I'm just like, of how much content they were able to squeeze out of this tiny time frame, I'm just like, I loved it. I really, really do. But, like I said, this season mostly challenges their perspective of the badge, where, at least on Nolan's point, seeing Armstrong doing what he's doing created that situation in his brain, like, where how are we going to be able to trust, the next generation of officers after us if there are people like Armstrong that's already within the department, kind of corrupting it from its root. Then you have Wes, who, when he gets his storyline, once he loses Lopez as a TO and he gets his new TO, that creates more of an argument for him, because, like, again, he always thought that, again, similar to what we were seeing at season 1, season 2, like, he had this expectation of like how things were growing up to become an officer since the very beginning of his mental development. Now being on the closing end of it and having this individual come into play that kind of not only challenges him to, like, this is the last big obstacle he needs to overcome, but at the same time he's also got to deal with prejudice, deal with stuff that he has always been aware of, but never had to imagine it actually had to be on his own side. And that's just something that I think, again, challenges him as like, what does really being an officer mean in the end when you have someone like that? And Lucy, to an extent, I think in terms of like that core storyline, obviously Bradford, Gray, and even Harper kind of chime in on this more often with those two, but I would make that Chen got a little bit of the lower end of that stick when it came to that particular storyline. Which I think it was more beneficial, where she was already pursuing her, you know, future of it. And I feel like each one of them had a perspective differently. It's just like, I'm talking about with the core storyline, she didn't really exactly follow, where she's more focused on what's next to becoming an officer. Nolan's focusing on how does the future of the P2s look like when you have an Armstrong in the higher ranks of it. And for West, how do we leach out the actual behaviors of the officers we already have before? And then we have a couple of a few of the new characters that kind of join in with this season, that kind of also like join the conversation, where like policing is such nowadays a very delicate conversation to have, where again they are upholding the law, but some of them put the law in their own hand, and it creates a lot of these very much of a argumentative situations where like everyone can look at a situation very differently. How do we go about it, and how do we tackle it correctly so that every side is appropriate? And I think when we got to this point, I think it was very necessary to have those conversations, because again, we are at that very crucial time for them, because every one of them in a way is kind of moving up to the next level, whether some are faster than others. But regardless of everything I said, I think the story here was utmost what it had to be, and I think they did a really great job on the delivery portion of it. I like it. I really, really do. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't even know what I was trying to stretch out a little bit more. I do apologize for that. But then going to the characters, and I do definitely believe they did a really good job of balancing everyone here appropriately, even giving some of the people that I felt like always get a little bit short shaft a little bit more time in the limelight, so to speak. And I feel like, now that I really think about it more often, that all these characters this season were developed, I think, in a really great manner. That each one of them had something to learn. They had a goal. They had some sort of destination in mind, and they got through it. And whether it was a directly or an indirectly sort of way. So to start from top to bottom as normal, we have Wesley, who I want to say he was in the season 2 cast, but I definitely know for sure he was part of season 3, where they definitely try to loop him more into things. And with that being said, I don't think Wesley has the most often to do with the storyline. He's just always having to be included, whether it is his connection with Lopez or being called by the precinct, because again they have that such more of a strong relationship, especially in the premiere, where Nolan calls him up first for representation, regardless of that ended so well for them. It still counts at the end of the day, of Wesley being the go-to lawyer for them. But honestly, other than that, he's more focused on his upcoming wedding, being a father. There's so many things that about to change his life, and he's ready to tackle them on. He just doesn't have the other perspective of Lopez, who has to deal with, becoming a detective, dealing with a leader of a cartel. Like, he doesn't have that same, stressfulness behind him. But at the same time, he is also very stressed, just trying to preserve this new family he's about to get, having Lopez become his wife, and then soon enough having his own child come into his life. So it's a lot for him to deal with. Is we don't really see too much of it, if I have to be a little bit bullish on that. Not to say he doesn't do anything. It's just that I think his growth is more of just like being a much more dependable partner to Lopez, like being a good foil to her. His insightfulness and calmness rather than Lopez's feistiness, if that is understandable to digest on that one. So then moving on to our watch commander, when we have Sergeant Gray. I always said that Sergeant Gray never gets too much of the action. He's always like, the big leader, the alpha dog, always, putting everyone in check, even like his own, like, close by officers. He still very much has that understanding, but he doesn't really get too much to do. I think this season they definitely do give him a little bit more, especially when it comes to Jackson's storyline, when it came to, and we'll get to more about this when we get to Jackson, where about police reform, where that storyline particularly touches Gray deeply, because again, Gray being the oldest, of the main cast, having the much more experience than any one of them, he has been through the ringer much more than not. Especially at a time period where, prejudice was very apparent in these departments. It wasn't always fair, equal treatment at times. And, sometimes people can get away with stuff that other people could not. and Gray always had the, taught seeing more of Gray's, not directly, but just more of his understanding of like where things are at, and what he would do if he ever was in a good position of power to kind of create those changes. And that's something, honestly, that he hasn't really been able to really do much until we get to this particular point in the story. Seeing Wes kind of deal with all of this, this threat around him, and at the same time, Gray was also being convinced by his wife to eventually retire because, he's getting older. Their daughter's going off to college. That now's the time for this moment to maybe consider what is the next chapter for them. What is the next point for them to take on their story together. And, as much as he's like, okay, I really kind of don't want to, but he does kind of understand, okay, there is a larger play here. But by the time we get to this storyline with Wes, that's when kind of like he has to realize, no, this cannot happen. This cannot. I cannot let this go about. I have to stay here a little longer. And after that, we don't really get to see too much from him, to be honest with you. He's always there. He's always doing his thing, always supporting whoever he has. He's got to support you for the day. But I just love Gray so much. He's a great moral compass. He's a great leader. And it just never cracks me up how much he uses his authority to cut Nolan's ass. It's just, I love it so much. I really, really do. I love him as a character. Then moving on to our Brass 3, starting with Harper. Her second season as a full cast member. Her first full season from start to finish. I definitely now we can, all the ease, like the very tension that she had with Nolan, all the safeguards she had in place, all that finally being kind of, again, we saw that at the very end of season 2, them, kind of like, yeah, it's still a training relationship. She's still got to teach him the ropes. But on the opposite end of the shoe, like, she does trust Nolan a lot. She really does. Even though sometimes his innocence can also get in the way of her, like, trying to get through things. But honestly, these two bond between them being parents, and then, seeing more of them, trusting each other. That is very sweet. That, like, I don't really feel them as a TO and a boot relationship anymore. It is two comrades, paired up together, but it's still a little bit more complex than that when it came to, Nolan being reprimanded for his actions during the Armstrong premiere. That he still had a little bit more to go, and even Harper, despite them, being able to like kind of get through this on the opposite side of it, not in a negative firing sort of way, they still definitely had they got by the skin of their teeth. And, even though that was in play, she still had a lot to teach him. Not as quite much as, you would expect it, but still a decent amount for him to go upon. And then we kind of, start diving in a little bit more to her personal life, especially, her whole motivation last season was primarily to just be a good co-parent, to be a present mother to her daughter, which ironically, I don't believe we get to see her, if not at all this season, whether COVID played a factor in it or not. Like, we don't get to see her, or the ex-husband by that matter. So we kind of moved on for that. Now we kind of like, seeing her like just kind of going through the emotions, kind of like learning these new experiences, getting back into dating, more prominently than not. And especially when we go for the community storyline with Nolan and her interacting with this new individual that kind of runs that neighborhood they're assigned to, and then also like meeting other people when it comes to having to be present for her daughter. Definitely kind of gives her a little bit more of like the freedom, let's say that much, to be able to kind of see what else life is out there besides just being an officer. Obviously she still has her priorities straight, that she's still going to be a mom first, but at the end of the day, she is able to like have some fun of her own, have a little bit of a kinship with other people, whether that is romantically or friendly. And there definitely was a warming up process she did throughout season 2. Now here she's kind of like let her guard mostly down, and as well as she's gaining a new not just with Nolan but also with Chandler. So when it came with later on with the undercover arc, which we'll talk more about in Lucy's case, but definitely Harper having someone like, okay, Nolan's not going to be forever like my protege, but having Lucy there, where again going back to Lucy's case, where she's more focused on what is after becoming P2, what is the next thing for her, what does she really want to do. And Harper kind of seeing that initiative, especially after that their first episode, their one-on-one together in season 2, definitely inspired her to like kind of take her under her wing and kind of mold her into a much more better version of herself. Someone that's not going to make the same mistake that she did in her personal life, but still have the overall impressive ability that she had when she was a UC before we got to her at the point of season 2. Then when we got to Lopez, when it came to Lopez again, she had, I think, the biggest title change where she went from, being a, or we kind of saw this at the very end of season 2, but this being more official, where she became a P3 training officer to becoming an official detective. At the same time, realizing she was going to get pregnant. Yeah, that wasn't great timing for her, and that was the weird thing about it, boy. But she was very much like, again, the Lopez we know always focused on like the task at hand. Always like, okay, I'm finally here. I ain't gonna let a baby stop me. I'm gonna do as much work as I can to get through it so that I can, be the best that I can be in this field. And especially once we get a little bit more deeper into her detective days, her running into La Fiera, which in a way becomes her own version of Nolan and Rosalind, where they have this, I guess, the ethic connection between them, but at the same time, La Fueta, La Fueta, La Frenza, I already just forgot what it was. Being a mother, and then Lopez becoming a mother very soon, definitely bonded them in a way where it's weird at the same time, because again, it's reciprocal on one side, but not really on the other. And I think when you get through it to that other point, to see her like kind of having to like delve the line where like, yeah, there's some things that like went to like, she's not exactly the most evilest person in the world, because she has her moral compass in her son, and then her kind of imparting her motherly instincts to Lopez, which it feels like sweet but also weird at the same time. It doesn't feel correct, because again, it is coming from a criminal mastermind, but and Lopez, still being the determined person she is really gutting to be the one to like take down this magnitude of a force to be reckoned with, but at the same time having to deal with all the this woman is not someone you should take lightly. She definitely is like 2 steps ahead of things. She definitely is thinking of the further plan. What does she need to do in the now to accomplish her goals in the future? But definitely Lopez was the right person to tackle that for this case, in order to like be able to stop her, especially like still keeping her level headed throughout especially when we get to the point where Lafuente's son dies, and Lopez having to basically be like the mediator in a potential gang war was just like, damn, this woman, even when she's got a lot of odds against her, she's always like swinging and always hitting. I do appreciate that a lot. I really, really do. And I'm still reminded in like the scenes where we do get with her and Jackson, their relationship throughout the first 2 seasons. Now this being more like the longs of like, hey, like where it's kind of like when your kid turns 18, we're like, they're not, the parents will still be there, but not as often as before, because you're kind of becoming a little bit more independent. That's kind of how I view her and Jackson's relationship this season, where they still are close, but definitely there was that sense of like, yeah, like Wes has to kind of do his own thing, kind of learn his own things without having Lopez in his corner. And it made Lopez a little bit stronger out of it. It definitely made Wes even stronger out of it. My man Bradford, I still am considerably forgetful when it comes to his development. I said that a lot during season 2, where I felt there was a very much of a clear shift between the Bradford we saw in season 1 to season 2. At that point, now here to season 3, it's much more apparent as he has now spent almost an entire year with Lucy, learning from her as much as he's been teaching her, having a different more of a openfulness when it comes to his mannerism, not just in his workful as being an officer, but at the same time in his personal life, where the first half of the season is just him finishing off Lucy's training, and there really isn't that much about it. It's similar to where Lucy's kid, where I think a little bit Bradford was a little bit more pushing her, as well as like what is going to be the next thing that you have to do to be able to get through it. And I think that was definitely something that was positive about it, because he was always thinking about Lucy's future at the end of the day, making sure she had a very stable place in the department with the skill sets that he imparted to her. And then go into the second half, where he kind of has to like figure out what is next for him, because, and I will say the one thing I won't get the writer's credit for, and again, I would have loved a line from this, but they never did, where we saw the end of season 2 that he and his girlfriend at the time was willing to go the distance with the long distance thing. But in season 3, we just completely forgot about that. That just magically went away. Because again, I know COVID is a thing. We can't afford, flying out actors everywhere. We can't afford that many, actors to come out to the show. So I do understand from that point to cut out someone. But at the same time, it's like, why do all the big grandiose stuff if you were going to follow up with it? So I'm like, yeah. And that's not to blame it on Bradford. It's just one of those things where, like, it was just like the timing of things just didn't really work out for him. But I will say that Bradford definitely opened up a lot more as a person this season, especially with his relationship with Lopez. Because again, those, they had a long history together as companions and as friends. It's the fact where Lopez kind of needs him to be her man of honor, which I'm just like, damn, that's just so damn cool. That really is. And Bradford even just accepting it, where like, I'm pretty sure had he done this before season 1, he would definitely have shot down the idea. But between Lucy and even the other rookies, his experience throughout the last year, kind of getting over Isabel, I think those were all very important stepping stones to get him to the other side of it, where like, yeah, now he's more open-minded, a little bit more friendly to people, allowing to like have a little bit more fun on the job. The episode that reminds me clearly is when Chen confesses her feelings for Bradford. I'm just like, damn, the freaking community at the time probably were like livid over that. We're like, damn, they talk about those certain words. It came out of their mouth, but it wasn't real. It was just it was a joke. And I'm just like, damn. I'm just like, how they must have felt, what it must have been all that. We'll talk more about that next year. We'll get to it. Don't worry, we'll get to it. But I will admit, of everyone that has changed the most, I think it is Bradford. When it comes to from season 1 to season 3, that is the most apparent from then on. And it's no also credit due to the actor himself, who showcased it where like he's still able to keep the coreness of the character, but is able to like evolve and like grow the character a bit more differently than not. And now on to our rooks. First we have Wes, which I think for him, he had the most crucial storyline of the season. At this point, the whole show, because it challenges the partial identity of the series itself. Was as we know, Lopez had to abandon his training mid-through because she was about to be promoted to detective. She couldn't do both that and be a P3, so she had to pass on the final weeks of Jackson's training to another individual, a Mr. Doug Stanton, played by the wonderful Brandon Routh, just fresh off his. I think that was the time period where he just left Legends full time, so he was definitely like kind of ready for the next role. I don't exactly remember. I think he was micromanaging both series, if I remember the timetables correctly. I do have to double check though. But if I do remember correctly, I think he was still on the show for another season, but I could be wrong. They could have shot things out of order. Who the heck knows? But the point is, this was his first real role since leaving the Atom behind. And I think here it's so surmountable that he went from playing a very nice, wonderful dude on that show, and then here becoming like a very apparent piece of crap. And he's hidden it. He's kind of, it's worked to where like, it's not noticeable. It's like one of those like, very disturbing character traits where like, okay, that's not how it is. That's not agreeable. But it's not something you really notice and like you really pay attention. Like only like the people that work alongside him would notice, and then the people who kind of like peer in once in a blue moon, they wouldn't know because they're not there every moment. They're not there every day. And then Jackson's just kind of being in the next of it, where he's kind of stuck in the middle, where like he is a parent of his position as a rookie, but at the same time, like just seeing the racism that Doug was very apparent of showing. Him denying is just like, it's gaslighting himself. Maybe he does know and he's just trying to get away with it, or maybe he's not. I don't really know 100% speaking, but the fact that he was able to do all these things in front of Jackson and get away with it at most times and now was just, it's kind of disturbing. And he's had more years of the force prior to that, so who knows how far he would have gone at other points. And I think the rivalry between them was just, it was not careful enough in terms of like the aspect of it, where he was stuck in this position where he couldn't really like, again, he's just a rookie versus a experienced officer on the force. It's a very difficult task to prove that. Even though he does have a voice, he does have a say in things. It's still very much very difficult to prove when that's all subjective. It's very much like one person's going to view that differently than the other, and that sadly is the wording of the day with this modern environment. Where like you can take a situation, you can show it to 100 different people, you're going to get multiple different answers. Not everyone's going to have the same exact reaction, the same exact opinion of it because everyone thinks differently. And that's kind of where Doug is, very happy about because, again, he gets to do the things he does. And with Jackson just being a fresh, recruit, he's not exactly in that position to be complaining that much because they'll assume he's just doing it because he doesn't like him or he's immature. And, that's unfair. And, Jackson really goes for it. I think, Titus's scenes in the third episode of the arc, where he not squares off against Gray, but he kind of like, yells off at him that that what is the purpose of what they're doing. I don't think what the methods we already have set in stone is enough, and then him and Gray having that tense showdown is just like damn, it's just so good. It was really, really good. I really did enjoy that mini arc a lot. I think those were my favorite episodes of the whole season, where seeing Jackson kind of having to literally fight for his life just to get this person off the streets it was very commended. It really was. And, I really love the moments where, like, the bad guy, the person doing the wrong thing, assumes they got away with it, and then they get immediately caught after that, and their facial expression change. That's my favorite of everything I see. That's literally my favorite. But, honestly, then, Wes definitely grew the most, especially with that storyline. Having to deal with, I think, sadly, is his biggest threat throughout the entire show. I'll speak more about that next time, but I definitely felt like, they really did a lot with that. And, by the time we got over, I mean, that's not to say he doesn't do anything afterwards. There was an epilogue to that arc, of course, towards the very end, having to, like, still deal with the fact that, like, which I can kind of relate to, where, like, no matter how much, dirt you have on someone, no matter how much evidence you have against someone, sometimes they can just get away with it scot-free, and them just not even being in that position, anymore, and they get out of it, it kind of makes them stronger, kind of a little bit more durable. They're like, oh, I got away with this, I can get away with it again. It doesn't matter. I got a lot of the protections on my side. And then there's this Wes who's like having, to deal with that. Is just, damn. It's like those episodes, and kudos to Brandon Routh for that. I might see him next year. I might. I'm not going to tease much more about that. But other than that, I think, again, for the actor, for Titus Mackin, I think he did a really great job with the material, especially those episodes. I think those had to be his stand-up episodes throughout the entire season. And it was definitely a way, at least for his character, to really end off his journey and his rookie career as a whole. Moving on to Lucy, where, again, like I said, this point of the story brings more opportunities than not to, like, focus on the future. We just saw Jackson having to fight for the integrity of the future of this department. She's more thinking about her personal future in this department. Does it become a detective? Does it become joining the narcs team, the Metro team? Like, there's so many different avenues now that she's about to hear the headway. Her being ahead of it is just was very respected. Definitely having all the teachings from Bradford definitely gets her legs up in the competition wherever she decides to go next. And this season kind of going into it where, we get that I think it was at the third or fourth, where she got to see, or even the sixth episode, I completely forgot, where she overhears a lecture from Harper about becoming undercover, and that it's not 100% clean cut as it is, but definitely there is a lot of room for satisfaction and a lot of, like, potential for success if you can do it correctly. The fact that, it is a thrill of, like, in a way of, like, having to lie to other people, having to become a different person, having to essentially be someone else to accomplish a mission. And for her, that was very alluring, because, again, Tim has pushed her to the limits so many times that, I feel like this is the only thing that could probably, match up to her energy to what she needs next. And then seeing her having to go through these certain situations where, again, of a rookie such very, very young P2, she has managed to adapt to these situations very, very calmly, very, very quickly. It gives her the instinct that, like, this is something she could potentially do for a career. Not often than not, considering, again, like, undercover work you don't have to do that every now and then. It's just, once in a blue moon, so to speak. But for her, like that was the thing that really allured her, like to like not to jump from Tim to Harper, but very much like that's the person she needs to learn for the next stage of her development. But also having to respect Tim and all the work, all the suffering and torture he threw upon her throughout their almost year together, definitely um, was just a lot for her to handle. And I do commend her for like just of all the situations she's been through, where like especially what happened in season 2, to come into this point in season 3, where like she's able to use that experience, to use that personal weakness for her advantage, was really really cool to see. It really was, and um it gave a lot of hope for like where that character could go next, where she could like take off from there. What is the next real direction for herself, and then now having her have some feet into this undercover world definitely was the thing to like kind of elevate her character to the next level, in my opinion. And then finally, John Nolan, man, that man cannot catch a break. He was blamed for being a mole. He got left back in the program for another month, having to like do a lot of things. And I feel like at the end of the day, this season was more about kind of like strengthening Nolan's personal directions with this job, where everything from the first few seasons has been him just learning the ropes, him kind of having to be the best officer he could be. This season, even though he is still a rookie for like another season, because I guess the writers just didn't want to promote him just quite yet, they definitely still give him a lot to do. Like they still treat him like a P2 officer, where alongside Chen and Wes when they get promoted, where he is doing stuff related to the drug war. He's still doing these very risky operations. He's still doing the things he was always made to do, but now he's learning from it. He's getting even more experience from it. I think this was a critical season for Nolan to learn, not just more about the Ford, but more about just having him himself even keep on growing. Especially we get more interjections, with his personal life, especially with the return of his best friend, which we haven't seen since season 1. So I'm like, damn, you just show up out of nowhere. His son having to kind of test him a little bit with his own future, and then with Nolan's newfound direction, where sadly he's not able to be a detective anymore because of the events of the premiere, but he decides, because of seeing Armstrong kind of be a bad example for the future of the department, him deciding to like step in and be a TO himself, becoming his new goal in life, is definitely was commended. Definitely showcased that he's still open minded yet still determined on getting that job done. I think Wes calls it not Wes Gray calls it rookie optimism, where like it's your first year, you think you can make a detective, that's great, and wait till life gets to you, man. Wait till life gets to you. But Nolan, I think he does go through a good amount this season to definitely kind of, makes him a little bit more, a little bit tougher in a way. He's still the same John Nolan we know and love, but definitely he's a little bit more rigid around the edge, especially when it comes to his connections with new people. You never really know what you could do with that. And his determination, obviously, is always shining through, especially going to night school after doing a very long shift. I wouldn't do that. I'm going home. I'm going to rest. I'm going to eat. But do whatever I want. I'm just not going to school. But no, honestly, I always commend John Nolan for everything he does. And I very much, there's a reason why he is the main character of the show, where definitely he is a shining example to everyone else of, no matter what age you are, you can still do the very best of your job, no matter what, whether you're a rookie or you're not. And I think that was a very valuable lesson that I had to be reminded of again with this season rewatch. But with all that being said, I love the rookie always. I'm always going to love it to the day I go. Season 3, despite it being much shorter, even only having 14 episodes, it still felt like we got a whole season of the show. We had a lot of moments with these characters, really going through it, but coming out of the other side better than ever. And definitely just to say that the story could be not the best, but if the characters are showcasing real growth and change, that's all the motivation you need. And that's exactly what I see here, where all these characters have grown. All these characters are moving on to the next levels of their careers, whether that is directly or kind of spiritually. It definitely was all needed to kind of like, remind us of like just this cast, this these band of people are the very same, like, like any other group out there, where you grow, you evolve, and you showcase it. And I think that that's what makes this show more special than not. Where when you actually get to see it, when you actually get to see, oh, this character is not the same as this character was a few episodes ago. I think that's the biggest compliment that you can get, and definitely this season really pushed the envelope for all of them. And definitely by the time we come back for season 4, it definitely kind of really shows that these characters have grown, they have evolved, and that's I think the most important part when you're making a TV season. I think that is the main reason, in my opinion, at least. So with that all being said, I'm giving this season 2 thumbs up. Once again, I highly recommend it. I say it's worth the binge. It is definitely worth setting aside your Saturday and Sundays to go binge this entire season for yourself. Let me know down below, what did you think of the 3rd season of The Rookie? You can go all wild with your comments, with your spoilers. I would love to hear about it. I would love to talk to you about it. But I believe that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So if you're unaware, this has been What's the Two from ActionX, reviewing the entire 3rd season of The Rookie in a spoiler-filled capacity. If you want to see more of us relating to The Rookie, you're in great luck. Next week, we will be kickstarting our every season 7 episode review sub-series here on ActionX starting next week, after brand new episodes that come out on ABC on Tuesday nights. So stay tuned. I'm very excited to get back to it. I'm very eager to like see what our favorite cast member, what our favorite crew, our favorite team over at Mid-Motion has been up to since we concluded season 6 not that long ago. But again, that's still a little bit ways off. Well, I don't know why I said that. It's only just a week. But, you know, we will be kickstarting from then on. But if you are curious about season 4, for us, if you loved us talking about season 3, what about season 4? Well, like I said before, we've already reviewed the entirety of season 3 and season 4. So if you want to like see my specific thoughts on each episode breakdown, you can go check that out on youtube.com/actionx, as well as our season 4 reviews if you want to get ahead of what happens next time. Trust me, can't wait to get to season 4 next year. I really, really can't. That season was a long one. That really was. But in a good way. In a really good way. But again, if you want to see more of us here in general on ActionX, we also do What's the Tube content for another show called Madlock. We'll be back later this coming year with more Reacher, with a brand new show called Suits LA. A lot of content coming your way. We also do After the Theater. It's our movie review series that we post at least once a month. Go check that out. But again, if you don't care about The Rookie and you're caught up to date, I'll see you guys next week for the return of The Rookie properly in season 7. But until then, if you're just going in order, I'll see you for season 4 at some point next year. I don't know when. I'm gonna focus a little bit of the time. I don't even know what's gonna happen by this time next year. But again, thank you so much for watching. Have a happy New Year. Enjoy your festivities if you are celebrating. If not, get a lot of sleep as you can. 2025 is gonna put us for the ringer. That I know for sure. But again, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Like, favorite, share if you want to. Ring that bell and follow us on social media. But until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there. Be good to each other. And as always, peace out.